The United Nations report is warning the Israeli occupation has battered the Palestinian economy, wiping out nearly 2 decades of growth in just over a year. It says Gaza's economy is in free fall since Israel's war began and is now worth just 13% of its value in 2022. It also found GDP in the occupied West Bank plunged 17% last year due to Israeli military action, with per capita income falling to 2008 levels. The report estimated that without decades of Israeli occupation, real per capita income among Palestinians could have been 241% higher. The UN warns the toll on the economy and ongoing violence will have a devastating effect on people. It's calling for an end to the expansion of illegal Israeli settlements and the lifting of restrictions on the Palestinian economy. Joining us from Ramallah is Raja Khalidi. He's the Director General of the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute. Good to have you with us. So if you could just explain to viewers how the occupation, with the issue of settlements, security zones, restrictions on movement, how all of that interferes with the smooth running of an economy.
It doesn't interfere. It undermines and, in fact, aborts the free running of an economy or market. So anything we've had in Palestine before the war, at least up to the war, was distorted, constrained, and subject to arbitrary Israeli measures. And that applies to movement restrictions. It applies to Israeli government withholding of fiscal revenues and other unilateral measures, and it applies to, of course, the attacks by settlers against isolated villages and so on and so forth that we've been seeing even before 23. Now, today it's on a totally different dimension because of the shocks that the West Bank economy has experienced, and that the UNCTAD report shows, the plummeting literally in 1 year, and the very vague, anemic, if we wish, comeback in the last year in terms of some sort of, stabilization of unemployment and all of these critical measures in the West Bank. To talk about the Gaza economy in comparison with the rest of the Palestinian economy is really somewhat absurd because, as you said, 17% of what was already 13% of what was already less than 20% of the whole Palestinian economy means that really Gaza's no longer has an economy per se. Now, I think what's important in this report is that it's looking at the matter from an aggregate macro angle, and cumulatively looking at the impact of on the Palestinian economy over 25 years of these restrictions, adding to it, of course, the shocks experienced during the war. Now, this is coming from an authoritative source. I say authoritative for two reasons, not just because it's UN, but it is the longest UN agency to have been monitoring the Palestinian economy. For 40 years, it's been producing these reports. And so it knows what it's talking about. Second reason is that this is a report, in fact, prepared by the UNCTAD Secretariat, but in fact for the United Nations Secretary General to report to the United Nations General Assembly on the cost of occupation. So the second important point here is that this is part of an attempt to systematically document the cost of occupation, and the numbers are astounding. The
Right.
$90 billion lost production opportunities, and something similar in terms of no access to Area C. So those are stunning numbers.
How much of a difference would the latest plan by Donald Trump make to people being able to revive their economic life when you take into consideration, when it comes to Gaza, it looks like from the map released by the White House that the Israeli troops, even in the last stages, will remain inside Gaza, and security perimeter means controlling the borders and the flow of people, goods, everything. And in terms of the West Bank, it doesn't state any restrictions or withdrawals of Israeli troops from Palestinian towns in the West Bank, removal of restrictions on freedom of movement, or reining in these violent Israeli attacks that have been displacing Palestinian villages, according to the United Nations.
Precisely, and this is the problem, that in Gaza, the best we can hope for, if there were to be a ceasefire, even under the extremely restrictive conditions imposed by this plan or these principles, there will not be a recovery. There will not be a rebuilding of the Gaza economy. There will be a survival at a better level of survival than they are now surviving. Relief, recovery at best over the coming year, to be optimistic. In the West Bank, precisely, this is not a plan. So this is a plan which is very partial in terms of it's focused on Gaza, but it says nothing about the West Bank. Not only the annexation issue is not even mentioned, but settlement activities, settler attacks, or as if it's precisely as if these can go on, inevitably or indefinitely with nobody, taking a position about them. So even if there's a relaxation of the misery of Gaza and some end to the killing and some, the remaining people can remain alive in the West Bank, if there's not going to be anything similar in the West Bank, it's going to be even worse next year in terms of economic output here than it has been in the last 2 years.
All right, thank you very much, Raja Khalidi from the Palestine Economic Policy Research Institute.
Don't miss out to get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.